Fala galera, beleza? Alegodzilla no ar, aqui quem fala é o Ale. Galera, seguinte, estamos de volta com mais um vídeo. Esse aqui vai ser mais um react, né? Dessa vez do jogo Mafia The Old Country pra vocês aí. Eu não trouxe anteriormente nenhuma gameplay, nenhuma informação, porque realmente não tinha saído nada assim muito puro, aquela gameplay original, sabe? Tipo, o cara jogando mesmo, entendeu? Então, recentemente a IGN postou um vídeo de gameplay, só que, cara, tava muito ruim, muito porco o vídeo deles, a compressão ficou muito ruim, tanto é que a galera até achou que o jogo teve um downgrade gráfico de tão diferente que tava os vídeos anteriores. Agora, recentemente eles tiveram aí um hands-on, né, um preview de acho que uns 3 capítulos e soltaram aí uma gameplay estendida, que é a que a gente vai reagir agora. Então já deixa o like aí, se inscreve no canal, ativa o sininho para não perder nenhuma notificação desse canal, cara. Vem comigo, vê essa gameplay, curtir. Lembrando que eu vou trazer pra vocês também Mafia The Old Country, né? Fica a dica pra vocês aí. Pega o jogo, mídia física, cara, tá muito mais barato. Esse jogo vai vir aí a $50, então vai ser mais barato. Então, vamos curtir comigo a gameplay aqui, que eu tenho certeza que mais um jogo que você vai adorar.
Before I sat down to play about 3 hours of Mafia The Old Country, Hangar 13 President Nick Baines repeatedly mentioned his team's desire for players to finish this prequel story. And so with that goal in mind, the latest Mafia game turns back the clock both chronologically, it's set in the early 1900s in Sicily, and in game design.
Cecília, olha a gameplay, cara.
Mafia 3,
agora sim, hein?
Went full open
A Mafia 3.
And the developers seem to feel similarly about it in hindsight as players.
Lembrando que tem gameplay do Mafia no canal, né? O Mafia, tanto o Mafia 2, o Mafia 3, se eu não me engano. Só o Mafia 1 que eu acho que eu não tenho.
Stunning and highly detailed world that, while explorable, really only existed as a beautiful backdrop for your main mission, rather than trying to keep you busy with menial tasks and side quests. In fact,
aí ele quis dizer que o Mafia 3 era o Mafia, só que como ele era mundo aberto tipo GTA, várias missões secundárias, não sei o que, ele ficou um pouco diferente do que era o Mafia no início. No 1 e o 2, o mapa principal, o mundo aberto, era só um pano de fundo para você fazer as missões. Você passava por ele e tal, né? Então esse Mafia agora, The Old Country, vai voltar às origens.
This is, like Mafia 1 and 2, a story-first, not open-world action-adventure. And interestingly, your primary upgradable weapon isn't a gun, though they are certainly here, but rather your knife. Stealth is fully
supported. Vamos usar uma faca para ter o stealth, aí sim, hein?
At launch, or as I like to call it, a reverse Randy Pitchford price tag.
O preço dele vai ser $50, ou seja, aqui no Brasil, né, vem aquela facada. Vai ser uns 250, 280, você deve encontrar promoção por aí.
Playing on a high-end PC, which is where the footage you're seeing here came from. It's the early 1900s and late teenager Enzo Favara has recently escaped the sulfur mines he spent his childhood laboring in and started to become his own free man while working in the vineyard of Don Teresi, a Sicilian mafioso who protects the people and property of the region from the thieving bandits that lurk in the hills, in exchange for monthly protection payments, of course.
A pleasure, as always.
I really like how The Old Country tries to depict Enzo's progression from a very innocent kid into a bound-by-blood, fully vetted member of the Teresi outfit who's got the green light to do anything he thinks needs to be done for the good of the family. We see this play out in
Olha, a faca dele mudou, hein? Vai evoluir a faca. É legal. Tá trocando, né? Olha, o mundo aberto aí. Aberto, né?
Another made member of the family.
Parece Zelda ali, ó.
Luca and Cesare are essentially the mafioso version of an angel and devil on your shoulders, where Luca preaches patience and using violence only as a last resort.
E vai ter dois amigos, dois parceiros, e um vai ser tipo um demônio e o outro tipo um anjo. Não mata aquele cara, conversa com ele. Aí o outro, não, vai lá, dá um socão na boca dele.
For example, on our first collection stop, we visited Marco, an olive farmer. Marco always pays on time, but on this occasion, he's late. Luca gives me an unloaded gun to be used only as an intimidation tactic to get Marco to pay up.
Yours is unloaded. You give him a chance to be brave.
But Cesare told me, quote, An extra pair of hands helps jog their memory about the late payment. Side note, I think I saw more.
Será que vai ter sistema de karma? Tipo Red Dead Redemption, Infamous?
We might need a new Game Awards category for this.
Olha, ele falou que nunca viu tanta fruta assim no...
Nor punches thrown, and I got the Don's money from Marco's safe after finding the combination nearby. I appreciate that Hangar 13 put thought into Enzo's journey into the Teresi crime family here, and didn't just instantly let you become a murdering psychopath. Things escalated slightly on our second stop, though, after we rode our horses across the Sicilian countryside to the farm of Mr. Bangalino, whose workers, led by a man named Manuela, are on strike.
We can't have strikes around here, Manuele. You and your...
É bem cinematográfico, né? As cutscenes. Bem dirigida, né?
Countryside while riding to each destination on this mission. Mafia: The Old Country ditches the proprietary engine it's used in all 3 previous Mafia games and moves to Unreal Engine 5 for this installment. To be fair, the previous engine was no slouch. Mafia 2 in particular was a strikingly good-looking game at the time it came out, and Unreal maintains the series' reputation for delivering lovely locations.
Eles adotaram o Real Engine, né? Motor gráfico. Mas o motor antigo já era muito bonito, né?
Of establishing the Old Country's Sicilian setting. I can't wait to see more of this world in the rest of the campaign. Anyway, Manuela pulled a knife, introducing me to what is, as I mentioned earlier, perhaps the weapon that Mafia: The Old Country puts the most importance on. You can unlock and earn new knives, and each has unique modifying properties, giving you a reason beyond the cosmetic appearance of each blade to choose a specific one that suits your combat preferences. You've got a lot of moves in a knife fight: thrusts, slashes, parries, and dodges. Like in the Batman Arkham games, heavy attacks can't be parried and must instead be dodged. And there was still one final collection errand to run in Chapter 3,
demais, mano.
And as you may have guessed by now, the cannoli hit the fan on this one. A visit to a farmer named Fichera sees him yell at us in a reversal because his new water pump was stolen by bandits, and the protection he pays Don Teresi handsomely for didn't protect his valuable property. It's finally here that the patient Luca tells Enzo that he's got free reign to put live ammo in his gun and not be afraid to pull the trigger, as these lawless bandits were effectively putting their hands in the Don's pocket by stealing from Fichera.
We can't have that.
This leads to a hunt up the hillside through 2 separate bandit camps before we finally squared off with, and shot many bullets into, the dozen or so wayward thieves that stood between us and the water pump they stole. The familiar third-person cover-based shooting gameplay will be instantly recognizable not just to Mafia series regulars, but also anyone who's played a good third-person action game in the past decade. The Old Country isn't old here, but the gameplay systems are comfortable, effective, and fun. Less comfortable, at least for me, was the cutscene that followed the death of the last of the bandits when Cesare cuts off the finger of one of the bandits.
Caraca, mano, olha só.
Gold ring as a bonus payment for his troubles and tosses the detached digit into the well.
Could be pure gold.
Nossa, você viu?
Got no use for it now.
Caramba.
Enzo.
Isabella.
With all of your onboarding completed in Chapter 3, the next section of Mafia: The Old Country saw one massive mission play out, involving the Don's daughter Isabella, who Enzo clearly has reciprocated feelings for.
Keep an eye on me. You'd be lucky if you can keep up.
And Gennaro, the son of Baron Fontanella, who's arguably an even bigger fish in the Sicilian mafioso sea than Don Teresi is. Gennaro wants to show off his fancy new car, and he also wants to woo Isabella, so he sets up a picnic date in the nearby ruins. It starts with Enzo having to babysit the gathering and ends with a kidnapping, a car chase involving you on a horse, a trail of bodies left in Enzo's wake, a stabbed, double-crossing business partner, a happy Don Teresi, and an even more smitten with Enzo, Isabella. It started quietly, with Gennaro driving Cesare in his car to the ruins, and Isabella insisting on riding there on horseback alongside Enzo. Yes, you'll be able to choose and ride your own horse in Mafia the Old Country, with each steed even having its own personality and characteristics. Based on what I played, it didn't necessarily seem like your choice of horse would materially affect gameplay, but it was a welcome way to add a bit of life and meaning to the narrative nevertheless.
Here we are.
É, você deixa um pouco da sua cara, mas não muda muita coisa, só a aparência.
You can take pictures of scenic spots with.
Have you ever used one of these before?
Unfortunately, it was the only opportunity I had to use it in the 3 hours I played, but hopefully you get to use it semi-regularly over the course of the campaign.
A mecânica é legal, né? Olha,
You're
que legal.
also introduced to the driving mechanics of the Old Country after you rendezvous with Cesare and Isabella in the form of a low-stakes race around the ruins, perhaps a nod to one of Mafia 1's most infamous missions. But while Cesare and Enzo are messing around with Gennaro's car during his date with Isabella, bandits, I won't spoil their identity here, swooped in with guns blazing and kidnapped them both. They were really only after Gennaro, and having to take Isabella as well proved to be, well, you can imagine it ended up complicating things severely for the kidnappers. I got to wield a shotgun in this segment and found that it packed a satisfying punch. There was no bringing a knife, let alone stealth chokeouts, to a gunfight here. I brought Enzo in with an itchy trigger finger.
Caramba, cara, tá muito bom.
I was able to run down their wagon and gun down plenty of the kidnapping cadre and rescue Isabella, who rewarded Enzo with a kiss.
Ai, que delícia! Aí
But
sim.
while Cesare brought Isabella back home, Enzo still had to get Gennaro back, because returning without either one would leave Enzo equally dead from either father. It's this section that allowed me to really unleash my inner Sam Fisher, as it was set up for stealth rather nicely in an open area, letting me pick my path and remain undetected. If you give me a stealth option in a game, I'm gonna take it 9 times out of 10, and Mafia the Old Country was no different. The developers later told me that they don't expect most players to make it through the entire area, which was admittedly quite large and stocked with a ton of bad guys, without alerting anyone. I took this as a personal challenge, and while I held out for quite a while, eventually I did get spotted and had to start shooting. But while you are in the Old
Eu também sou assim, eu começo no staff, mas depois abro mão.
Rules are in effect. You crouch to make less noise, throw coins or picked up objects like bottles to distract bad guys, and can either knife them quickly or try to strangle them unconscious, which triggers a button-mashing QTE you've got to be quick about, lest they slip out of your grasp. There are even conveniently placed empty containers around that you can hide the bodies in so that they're not discovered. The Old Country doesn't break any new ground here, but in my experience, it does familiar stealth gameplay reasonably well. I do appreciate that there are upgradable bead slots on your rosary that affect gameplay, like this one that dampens the sound of your footsteps. And I appreciated those dampened footsteps until I reached the last man standing for the kidnappers, Messina, whose real story you'll learn when you play the game yourself. Enzo challenged him to a knife fight, which Messina accepted by dropping his gun and engaging Enzo on his terms. I was having trouble
Caramba, isso é muito legal, hein?
just right in the ensuing battle, but I kept enough blood in Enzo's body for him to emerge as the victor in the fight. Side note, I died a couple times during my 3 hours while playing on normal, but there are multiple difficulty levels to choose from if you want to ratchet things up or down. And after returning to the vineyard, Don Teresi, after hearing of Isabella's kidnapping, tells Enzo he wants Messina alive.
You put the rest of those bastards in the ground. Messina, you bring back to me alive.
Whoops. Yeah, about that. But ultimately, I did good, the boss said, and Isabella made her feelings quite clear with the smile on her face directed at Enzo. Chapter 5, the final one I got to play, let me again flex my stealth muscles by tasking me with infiltrating the home of the man ultimately responsible for calling for the Gennaro, and by collateral damage extension, Isabella kidnapping, and dragging him out of his house and back to my boss. Or, put another way, to kidnap the kidnapper. This mission could truly have been pulled straight from a Splinter Cell game, as I had my choice of ways up the hillside to the large villa at the top. I kept it quiet, stabbing my
Meu,
way
então stealth vai ser muito forte nesse jogo, né, cara?
eventually getting into the house and to my target.
Vai ser da hora fazer tipo a missão inteira em stealth, será?
As by the time I walked out with my target
se lascou.
in tow, everyone still left standing knew what was going on, and I had to shoot my way out. As to what happened to that man I brought to the Don, well, you'll find out. I left my extended hands-on session with Mafia the Old Country with very few concerns. In roughly 3 hours, I played 3 chapters, but how many chapters are there? Whatever the number is, it didn't feel like a story that was going to be wrapped up in a tidy 6 hours. I don't know how long the Old Country ultimately is, but when factoring in the studio president's comment about wanting everyone to see the end credits roll, as well as the $50 price tag, it's safe to presume that this won't be a 40 or even 30-hour game. But for my money, that's fine. I'm a dad with a job.
Se é um jogo linear assim, eu acredito que umas 30 horas já tá bom.
And more importantly, I'm now quite confident I'm going to have a lot of fun playing through this one, however long it lasts. The gameplay mechanics are all
Muito legal, cara.
familiar, with enjoyable stealth, shooting,
Quietinho.
knife combat, and driving. And perhaps the most important ingredient in a Mafia game, the story, had me engaged and eager to see where it was gonna go. It'll be good to get back to a Mafia.
É um game bem narrativo, né, cara? Então, cara, a história vai ser o personagem principal, né?
Don't miss our exclusive gameplay from last week, as well as the official story trailer. And for everything else in the world of video games, cruise on over to IGN.
Caramba, eu gostei, hein? Olha... Eu tinha visto já a gameplay anterior que eles postaram lá e, cara, tava muito ruim. Esse tá muito mais bonito. Você vê que a gameplay pura mesmo, quer dizer, sem mentira. Rapaz, eu gostei. E gostei que a história parece ser muito interessante, cara. Então, cara, espero que vocês tenham curtido. Eu adorei. Deixa o like aí, se inscreve no canal, ativa o sininho para não perder nenhuma notificação desse canal. E com certeza vai ter gameplay do Mafia aqui. Se tiver alguma dica ou alguma coisa diferente disso, também vou trazer para vocês aqui. Se tiver outra oportunidade de ter outro vídeo, também vou trazer. Lembrando que Mafia vai sair em agosto, agora ele não falou, mas vai sair agora em agosto, se eu não me engano, na primeira semana de agosto. Então o jogo já tá aí no gatilho, né, cara? Deve estar em Gold, inclusive, né? Então, cara... Muito obrigado por ter assistido até aqui. Vamos aguardar ansiosos e hypados para mais esse jogo também. Cara, muito obrigado, valeu e tchau, tchau.